round of 32 matches we'll be seeing on today is Brazil taking on Japan. Brazil top Group C, scoring 7 goals while conceding just 1 across their 3 group stage matches. Meanwhile, Japan finished second in Group F. They also scored 7 goals in the group stage, but conceded 3 on their way to the knockout round. So both teams going unbeaten in their groups. And this is how the bracket is looking. The winner of this clash will be facing either Cote d'Ivoire or Norway in the round of 16. So this is a game that the president of the Japanese FA said maybe this is the biggest ever tie for Japan at the World Cup. And they've come into this World Cup with big expectations. I mean, they've reached the round of 16 in the last 2 World Cups. Do you think they've matched those expectations, JD, in the World Cup, what we've seen so far?
I wouldn't say they've matched it as of yet because, as you alluded to, right, they've understand what knockout football is. They understand how to win in knockout football as well. And I think the important thing we need to recognise with this Japan team, I know sometimes we look at the history of these nations and we kind of don't give them the respect that they deserve. This team had to deal with, first of all, an injury crisis just before the camp started and some of their key players not being able to participate in this World Cup. But they actually have, I would say, a very fluid system. Like, it's very clear as to who they are and what they're trying to do from the beginning right through to the end. Their consistency and their discipline, I think, has really showcased that. They don't necessarily need a star because they believe in the actual ethos of the team, the control and the manipulation, especially in the midfield, has been something that I haven't seen. They caught the Netherlands by surprise, and a lot of the other teams now are taking note. But I've been thoroughly impressed with Japan. If you haven't taken note of what they've done, then they're definitely going to showcase what they can do in the future.
No, I'm glad you brought up the injuries. So Mitoma from Brighton, not available. Endo, their captain from Liverpool, not available. Minamino from Monaco, not available. I mean, these are 3 key guys that they relied on. And then Kubo, who's maybe their best creator, hurts his knee 45 minutes into the Netherlands game, and yet they still keep moving. And what I really was impressed with the Netherlands game, Big Tones, was the fact that they actually played more like the Dutch do historically than the Dutch did. And I wonder if they're going to give some of Brazil their own medicine as well, because they just have this ability to adapt to whoever they're playing against. And I think that makes them very dangerous.
Yeah, first off, there's been a lot of federations that have played Brazil, right, and said this is the biggest game in the history of our federation. It is, and we did this in '94. I remember hearing this, prior to the game. Biggest game we've ever played. It's Brazil. They still have the yellow jersey. It still means something. It's not Jogo Bonito that we saw in 1970, but that's gone away, for years now. This Japanese side, the thing that I would fear the most and the thing that I would look at the most is the midfield, the movement in the midfield. This is typical of what Japan has showed us World Cup after World Cup. It's about movement, constant movement, hawking the ball all the time. I look at this Brazilian midfield, as talented as they are, Casemiro, Paqueta, and Bruno Guimaraes, right? Not the fastest of players, certainly talented. I would take this midfield over the Japanese midfield in most occasions, but on a day like this, that would be the part of the field that I think I would study the most as I'm looking at this tactically.
I think Brazil is getting better every game. I think it gets to at this point with more confidence than they were after the Morocco game. I think the Scotland game was quite good. So I think Brazil arrives in a good point, with a lot of confidence. But I agree with you guys. I think Japan has been really good. I think the way they play, and they are very disciplined. They run back to defend. You have the types of Ueda, Maeda, and Nakamura that they are really good players. So Brazil will have a big test. Japan beat Brazil in a friendly game. Was only 4 starters in that game, but which means that the test will be very, very difficult for Brazil. But I'm confident that Brazil, especially after the last game against Scotland, will arrive to the game, with the right approach. And am I hoping that they can beat Japan, of course.
Lucas, it's one of the best shirts to wear in world football, the Brazilian gold shirt. But if you were in that Brazilian midfield, how would you approach the Japanese team to make sure you were successful?
Well, I think control the game would be really important. Like I said, Japan, they can adapt really well to the different type of players. So Casemiro, Bruno Guimaraes, and Paqueta, I think they will have to really control the midfield, don't lose position, and let Cunha and Vini Jr. and Ryan probably to do the attacking phase, but especially Casemiro, I think he will be the key for this Brazil midfield, because we could see that he was quite exposed against Morocco and Brazil suffered a lot. So, but like I said, midfield will be really important if they control the game, if they can get the ball, have the possession, and don't concede, especially counter-attacks for the Japanese team, I think Brazil will be successful.
Lucas, talk to us about Rafinha. Obviously a big loss for him. He was primed to have a big World Cup. He's now out. Hayan comes in to fill his stead, still a younger player. Obviously a good season at Bournemouth, but still young and untested in some ways. How is that your best front three, you would say, given the options available?
I think so. I think, with the injury of Rafinha, is a big loss for Brazil, of course. But Rafinha was kind of playing as a 10 in the first game, if you remember. So I think Ryan staying on the right, it gives more like a balanced team. Of course, Ryan is really young, but had a very good impact in the Premier League as soon as he came in. He is more or less similar to the Vini Jr. So in terms of the power, the pace, and take people on. So listen, I think this is the best 11 that Ancelotti feels right now, and they considered really. They didn't consider a lot, for the first 3 games. They only considered 1 goal. He scored 7. So I think that's the best 11 at the moment. But of course, Rafinha is a big loss because he has experience and he could, he could create something more from the right side. But I think Brazil is with Ryan is in a good place.
Look, let's stay with Carlo Ancelotti here. After match day 1, he said something to the effect, we grow into the tournament. You touched on this. He also said it's not about how we look, it's about winning games, right? And it seems, I'm the biggest fan of Carlo Ancelotti. Anybody here will tell you. But it seems so un-Brazilian, right? Because as neutrals, we just think of flair and beauty. And how is that perceived in Brazil?
Yeah, I understand. I think everybody expects the Jogo Bonito, like you called, But Ancelotti, I agree with Ancelotti. I think you only get confidence and you only get that flair winning games, Brazil is growing on the competition, and today will be another big test. I think Brazil will beat Japan. But yes, I think the first thing, Italian side of Ancelotti, of course, is trying to, first of all, have a very strong, balanced team, not concede much. And then with the confidence growing, I think Brazil will create chances and will score many goals. So, and then the flair and the Jogo Bonito will come back, and then we could see some, parts, some clips against Scotland.
Lucas, since we're on the topic of flair, I think we should probably address the elephant in the room, which is around Neymar. How would you manage his minutes? What would you do in terms of now we're in the knockout stages? And what do you see at 34 years old from Neymar, one of the best players of all time?
Yeah, it will be a real challenge for the staff, to use Neymar in the right time. I don't see Neymar fit to start the game at the moment. I don't think he's fit enough to start. But Neymar, he has the ability to impact any game. I think today, again, if Brazil needs, he'll probably come on. And he played, I think, 14, 15 minutes the last game. Today, maybe he could play another 30. Let's see if Brazil needs it. And he's a player that you need to take care, because he had so many injuries the last couple of years. But he's a player that to have around and make an impact, especially in the last 30 minutes, 50 minutes, I think it's a privilege. It's a luxury for Brazil. So I hope that he stays fit and Brazil goes all the way. So then we're going to see Neymar in a better fitness-wise condition for the late stage of the tournament.
So, Lucas, let's talk about kind of Brazil historically. I feel like you always produce dynamic fullbacks. So on the left side, you had Roberto Carlos, you had Marcelo. On the right side, Cafu, who was one of my favorites of all time, and Dani Alves. This time around, I feel like the media, at least over here, has identified the outside backs as maybe a weaker spot for this Brazilian team. How do you rate these fullbacks, and do you think that's going to help Brazil win or lose this tournament?
I don't think it's a weak spot. I think the fullbacks of Brazil now, on this time, in this World Cup, is just different. Of course, when we talk about Brazil, you remember about Cafu and Roberto Carlos and Marcelo and Maicon and Dani Alves. But we have different types of fullbacks at the moment. The team had to adapt. I think that will give you more consistent and more freedom to the front players. I think it's a different way. I don't think it's a weak spot, but it's a different of playing. That's why it's so important, I think, to have the wingers that is a real threat and very good on a 1v1. And of course, and Vini Jr. playing a little bit more inside to be dangerous and get the ball closer to the box. But the fullbacks, they play different. I wouldn't say they are weak, but they play in a different way in this World Cup.
Lucas, I want to talk to not the analyst, not the former pro. I just want to talk to the Brazilian. How far does this team go? Be honest with me. Like, what do you actually see in terms of the expectations for 2026 in this World Cup?
Listen, as Brazilian, we don't expect less than a win. But of course, it's a big question. If we go all the way until the semifinal, we play Argentina, that are playing really good at the moment. But I really think Brazil growing into the competition, we have a big chance of making the final. If we're gonna win, we never know. But of course, if you had asked me after Morocco, I would say, maybe quarterfinal. But after Scotland, I'm a little bit more excited, and I'm hoping that Brazil can go all the way. But like I said, today is a big game. Big game for Brazil. They cannot have a bad game today, otherwise they are out. So it will be a great test.
Thanks for watching this video from Morning Footy. For all news and insights regarding leagues around the world like EFL, Serie A, and all UEFA competitions, both men's and women's, don't forget to sign up for Paramount+.